Welcome to the Guy Lawrence podcast. I'm your host, Guy Lawrence. After building a successful health company and a number one podcast, I decided to do something deemed a little crazy. I let it go, set a new destination called the unknown, and use my heart as a compass. Each week, I sit down with great minds as we explore topics beyond conventional health, wealth, and wisdom to inspire and ignite the passion that's within us all to create the life we truly want. So my question to you is, are you ready to let it in? Hey Rockstars, Guy Lawrence here, of course, of the Guy Lawrence podcast, and I have another epic guest for you today, where of course I catch up and have conversations that are very purposeful, that go way beyond conventional health, wealth, and wisdom to inspire us to make change in our lives. And boy, do I have a rockstar guest for you today, and her name is Anita Moorjani. Now, I'm going to read a quote from her website, and I think this sums up the conversation today. You see, in every moment, you have a choice to either honor the part of you that craves something more, or to continue squeezing into a role that doesn't fill your cup. And of course, if you've been following me for a while, I was certainly all about honoring that part that we crave so much more and trying to live a life fiercelessly, if I can say that even without mumbling. And Anita is just an amazing example. Now, she's a best-selling author of a book called Dying to Be Me and What If This Is Heaven. Now, I mean, she sold millions of copies of books. She's an incredibly beautiful person as well. And I will say this as well. I tackled this podcast today because there'll be definitely people listening to this that has heard Anita's story, and there's obviously then people listening to this who have no idea. Now, if you have no idea of Anita's story, I wish I was you right now, because it is mind-blowing. And I remember hearing it for the first time going, oh my God, this is incredible. But for the people that have heard her story before, I wanted to ensure that I tackled this interview with Anita today in a very different manner and prod, poke and ask questions around things that she hasn't talked about so much before. So I feel like I really captured it today, and whichever side of the fence you're on, you're in for a treat. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not even going to share her bio or story. It'll all unfold as you listen. So sit with it and God, enjoy. It's awesome. So yeah, anyway, the other thing I want to mention as well before we head over to Anita is that on my website, guylawrence.com.au, I am literally about to run the beta test of the Let It In Academy, which is a monthly ongoing community membership where I help facilitate change through using meditation and neuroscience. And I've been working on it all year. The results have been going well. You've probably seen me flying around the country. I've done 13 workshops this year already, with a few more planned at the end of the year as well. And I'm loving it and loving what's being created. So if you fancy being a part of that, I want to come down the rabbit hole, just come back to guylawrence.com.au and click on the word products, and you can find out more, because there's a wait list there, as I'll be opening the doors at a very affordable rate for the beta test, which will be running sometime in August before I open it up a little bit later down the track. Anyway, that's guylawrence.com.au. Groovy, let's get over to Anita Moorjani. Enjoy, this is awesome. Anita, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Guy. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's wonderful. I ask everyone that comes onto my show, Anita, one question, and that is, if you were, say, on an aeroplane and you sat next to a complete stranger and they asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
Oh gosh, that's always such a tough question because what I do is actually quite complicated. And I was just in an Uber this morning where the Uber driver asked me what I did. And so I just said, I'm an author. And whenever I say that I'm an author, and actually I don't feel I'm an author. I feel I do many, many, many things, but I just say that. And then he goes, so you're a writer. And that's what they immediately think, that, oh, you're a writer. And then I said, well, sort of. And then he goes, I have a story. Would you write my book for me?
Oh, wow.
So it's quite a complicated thing. And then I always say, oh, no, I just write from the heart. And sometimes people are happy to leave it at that. And sometimes it gets into a real conversation where they want to know what I've written, and then it gets into me telling them what I've been through. So, yeah.
I can imagine it being, very interesting, because it's not a story you hear every day. So what would happen if they said then, oh, well, what do you write about? Like, what's your book? Yeah.
Yeah, then I say, okay, my first book was about my life story, and that's how it got me started. And then they'll say, oh, why? What's interesting? What is it about your life story? And they'll say, like, because I'll say it was my memoir, and they'll say, you're a little young to have a memoir. What's so interesting about it? Like, they're trying to figure out why would people buy my memoir, because so then I say, I had cancer and I was supposed to die, but I didn't, and that was 12 years ago. And then they go, oh, wow, what happened? And then I start sharing my story of what happened, and I say that I had terminal end-stage cancer, and I was supposed to die in 2006, and went into a coma, but came out of it and healed completely.
Yeah, and then the reaction was going, because I remember the first time I heard that, Anita, a few years back, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible, the one thing that was fascinating about the whole story as well was that when you came out of it, did you know you were going to write a book? Did you know that was what you were meant to do then from that point, or did that sort of come?
It unfolded. So I have never been a writer per se before. I had never written a book in my life. I mean, I hadn't even written articles. I did not consider myself a writer, so I had no idea I was going to write a book. People told me later that, oh, you should write about what happened. So I wrote about it and submitted it to a website, but I didn't even put my full name on it. So it was called Anita M's NDE, meaning Anita M's near-death experience. And the people who own the website, which I sent it to, it was a near-death experience website, and they put my story on their home page because they said it was they said it was like the most fascinating one they had received or had ever read. And so they put it on the home page, and then it started to go viral. But I was writing it for myself because I was trying to make sense of what had happened to me, because I'd gone into this coma. And when I was in the coma, on the outside, like people looking at my physical body, I was just lying there, and I was dying, and the doctors said my organs had shut down and the cancer had ravaged through my whole body. And so literally I was in the final hours of life. But what people didn't know was that I felt amazing. My consciousness or spirit had actually left my physical body, and I felt so wonderful and light and free. And I felt as though I had entered like this state of clarity where I understood why I had the cancer. I understood how all the thoughts, decisions, emotions that I had experienced in my life had weighed down on me, on my physical body, and to the point where it led me to having cancer and lying there in that hospital bed dying on that day. And the clarity was incredible. Like, I understood why I had come into this life and how I had not followed my calling. And I understood what caused me to go off what I had intended to come here and do and be. And it was just really incredible, the clarity. And then I was given the choice to come into my physical body, to come back or to stay on that side. And in my book, of course, I go on to explain how my dad was there to greet me, my deceased father, who I had a turbulent relationship with in life. But here in death, all I felt from him was pure, unconditional love and no judgment at all for that turbulent relationship that we'd had. You know, I'd always felt I'd let him down, but no, there was no judgment on this side. And so it was my dad that encouraged me that I need to go back and live my life fearlessly. He told me that it wasn't my time and that my husband Danny's purpose was linked to mine.
Amazing.
And I was, so eventually I made the choice to come back. But while I was in the coma, I was also aware of everything that was happening around my physical body. So when I came back, when I came out of the coma, I was able to tell people all the conversations they were having, what the doctor said, what the doctor did, and they were stunned. They were like, oh my gosh, how could you know you were in a coma? And I was telling them things that even happened outside the room, like beyond earshot. So they knew that something strange had happened. But within 5 weeks, the doctors could find no trace of cancer in my body, and they couldn't explain what had happened.
That's incredible. And the question, when you wrote it all down for yourself before the book came, were you nervous about how this was then going to be received, or what people think, or at that point did you not care anymore what kind of people thought? Or?
No. Well, you see, when I wrote it as if no one was going to read it. I wrote it purely for myself. And so when my brother actually showed me this website, this NDE website, and he said, look, people have these experiences, where they come out of their body like what you did. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. So when I sent them my story and they said, can they publish it on their site? I actually said, yeah, go right ahead if you feel it'll help people, but maybe don't use my full name, because I wasn't sure how people were going to react. And I was already, like, when I would talk about it, even within my own community, I could tell people were like thinking, oh, she's a bit weird. Oh, it was the drugs messing with her head. I mean, they were all aware that the cancer had healed, and that was, they were saying, oh my God, you've been touched by God, or, that was, they knew that was something really special that had happened. They knew I was lucky to be alive. So the physical healing was something that everybody could see, because they saw I walked out of the hospital 5 weeks later. But when I started talking about what it was that happened on the other side, that's when they said, oh, it must be the drugs that were just causing you to hallucinate. And I said, no, it wasn't. That, what I experienced on the other side, is what triggered the healing. And that's what people were skeptical about, and they would say that, no, maybe it was the drugs that healed you, or you're very lucky to be alive, but are you sure that, they were skeptical about what I was saying about what I experienced on the other side.
Yeah.
And so what I was more concerned about is that if I keep sharing it, people are going to make me believe that it was my imagination, and I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want it to erode. It was, what I experienced was so beautiful. I felt that it was getting hard to share, so I stopped sharing it. And so when I let the people at the NDE website publish it, I said, don't use my real name, because I kind of wanted to keep it sacred within me and not like tell everybody in the world that this is what happened, this is what I experienced. I thought I will let them all interpret it in their own way. And people had different ways of interpreting it. Some people just felt that there probably is a medical explanation, even if we don't know it now. There will be one. There is one. Some people just felt, okay, it was a spontaneous remission. These things happen. So people just gave it their own explanation. But not everybody was ready to hear what I had to say.
Yeah. Wow. So a question that popped in there for me, and I'm always curious about this, and especially now because you've experienced this, an incredible life. And from my background, working in the health and fitness industry, things like, it's always a mechanical process almost to fix health in many different aspects. And one thing that doesn't get tackled a lot from my end anyway, is emotions and our beliefs about ourselves and how we think of who we are. From what you've experienced through your life and through that journey, how much would you say that plays a role on our being and our health, our emotions?
Huge. It's very underplayed, because currently all our, like definitely in terms of medicine, they only think in terms of our physical bodies. And people tend to look at our physical bodies in a mechanical way, just like you were saying, a mechanical way. And they tend to repair it like you would repair a car. And even when people say, okay, I don't want to put drugs in my body because drugs are harmful, I'm going to do it naturally. Even when they do it the natural way, whether it's through food or supplements, we're still only working on manipulating the physical. But illness does not start at the physical. The physical is only a symptom of the illness. The illness starts somewhere really much deeper. This is what I realized. This was what I learned in that state of clarity, was that illness had started way before it started to manifest in my physical body. And so even when we are cleaning up our diets and doing herbal supplements, all we're doing is we are managing the physical symptoms. But we are not just physical beings. We are actually spiritual beings having a physical experience. That's what Wayne Dyer used to always say, that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and illness starts way before it appears on the physical. So even the herbal remedies and all, they're just to manage your symptoms. They're a healthier way to manage your symptoms than drugs and chemicals, but it still just manages the physical symptoms.
Yeah, interesting. Do you, sorry to interrupt, a question popped in there. Do you think there were, like, I'm just trying to imagine people listening to this right now, and then obviously there's going to be a sign of self-reflection and thinking, what is the relationship with myself, my beliefs, and am I heading into an illness, over the long term? Were there signposts along the way for you that with hindsight you look back, you could have changed maybe your approach? Or
Oh, yeah, 100%, which is why I now share my story. So I know that so much of it, though, was not my fault. And this is the thing that I want to tell people, is that if you get sick, it's not your fault. So there's no way, none of this is to blame you for getting sick. But yes, it is our responsibility. I mean, the best way to heal is to take responsibility for it, but it's not your fault you got sick. But yes, there were a lot of signposts, but the challenge is that the paradigm we live in does not support true emotional and spiritual health and well-being. That is why I say it's not your fault. We live in a paradigm that does not allow us to fully be or express who we are spiritually, emotionally, because we live in a paradigm that seems to foster comparison, competition, feeling less than, and we live in a paradigm that also is built on fear, and this fear is what feeds that. It feeds the cancer. It literally it breaks down your immune system. And what do I mean by we live in a paradigm that's based on fear? Think about every part of our life. So I want to backtrack a bit. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I realized when I was in the other realm is that everything that I had been conditioned to believe is actually the opposite of what I need to believe in order to live a healthy, happy life. It's the opposite. So the paradigm we live in, this world we live in, teaches us the opposite of what we actually need to know in order to live a happy, healthy life. So now what do I mean by this? So in order to truly have happy emotions, and so you have a happy immune system, which then produces the right chemicals and serotonin levels and all for you to be healthy, you need to live a life where you feel you have a purpose and you're following your calling, and you feel loved and you feel love and you feel loved, and so on, and all these kinds of things. But when you look at the way we've been conditioned from the time we go to school, everything we're taught, instead of being love-based, it's fear-based, and fear is the opposite of love, and fear is what breaks down our immune system. So, again, what do I mean by this? What I mean is that kids, instead of being taught to be passionate about life and about learning and about growing, they are instead taught the fear of failing. And so what drives them in school is not the love and passion for learning and growing and being more. It's more the fear of failing, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of comparison with the other people, the fear of not getting ahead. That's how kids are driven. When you take our medical system, our medical system doesn't care about our health and well-being. It's totally focused on our illness. So when you go to a doctor or when you go into the hospital system is not interested in actually taking you from where you are now to an optimum state of health and well-being. The hospital, the equipment, everything is only focused on finding disease and then eradicating that disease. And it's always, they're looking for a physical cell or a physical group of cells, and that's all they see as being the root of your problem. So whenever most people I speak to, they say they're afraid of hospitals. But we need a medical system or a healthcare system where people actually feel confident that when they go in there, they're going to be helped and taken to optimum health. But instead, people fear going into the medical system because they fear that some deadly disease is going to be found, which then they're going to take deadly chemicals to eradicate, which will eradicate their health as well. So you see, so every aspect of our paradigm, and don't even get me started on the government, every aspect of our paradigm is fear-based. And so we end up being these fear-based beings from the time we're really young that live in this state of fight or flight.
I can so relate to that. It just, in my own journey, with living with that fear for so long and being frightened to live the full expression of myself, and even when I thought I wasn't, Anita, and
I know, and so many people, and it's like you talk to most people at my conferences, and I say, how many of you relate to this? 90% of them put their hands up, and I'm thinking, why is the world still like this? Why do we still support a fear-based paradigm?
Yeah.
Then we ask, why is everyone getting sick? Yes, sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Look, it's how do we then? Because the one thing I am so grateful for in my life, Anita, is that, because I made a huge decision last year. I sold my half of my company. I stepped down to move into what I felt was more on purpose, and it was just through my own personal journey and growth. And I knew it was time, and I truly feel like I'm on purpose right now, and things are aligning and things are moving really quickly, but in a really great way. But it's taken me 43 years of my life to get to that point. Why do you think? Thank you. Why do you think so many people struggle with finding their purpose and their true passion, and are frightened to lean into it and stay with what they know instead?
I think with people, it is very difficult because people want to feel that they belong and they want to fit in. And that was my problem as well. I had always been a people pleaser to the point of being a doormat. And actually, I truly believe that all these qualities contributed to me getting sick, because I lost myself in trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And you don't realize that everybody is doing that. You think you're trying to please everyone else because you're worried about what everyone else is going to think, but everyone else is also worried about what everyone else is thinking. And so, like I often say, that what ends up happening is we end up living a life that's not our life. And when we do that for too long, it can lead to depression or illness, because you're trying to solve problems and live a life and deal with stresses that are actually not your stresses. They're not the problems or the challenges that would come up if you were living a life that was your authentic life. They come up from living a life of you trying to be someone you're not. That's why people face burnout, and that's why they get cancer, and that's why they get depressed. And really, we have to start changing our values, because what we define as success is currently only based on financial success. But what good is financial success if you're going to be depressed and sick? So we really need to redefine our values. And another set of values that I've started to talk about more is actually my new book, which I'm currently writing. Is called Sensitive is the New Strong. And in that book, I talk about how so many of us are really, really sensitive. I always was, and always have been. And our culture, our paradigm sees sensitivity as a weakness. But in fact, maybe that's why our world is in the predicament it's in. We've always defined strength as being, like conquer or be conquered, kill or be killed. Strength has always been brute force. And so we've always we've felt evolution has been based on survival of the fittest, and being fit means being strong, and it's got us this far. But what if, by our current definition, we are actually on the brink of becoming extinct? What if we are on the brink of actually extinguishing the human race if we continue the way we're going? And in the past, traits like empathy, sensitivity, conscious awareness, these have all been seen as weaknesses. But I believe that in order for human evolution to go to the next stage, we need to change our parameters of what strength really means. And we need to embrace those qualities like sensitivity, empathy, conscious awareness. We need to embrace those qualities and see those as strengths in order to take us to the next level of human consciousness.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's interesting, Anita, because I played rugby. I'm from Wales, and it's a very physical sport. And that's how I used to, I guess, prove myself through this physical contact game and mustering courage, because it was a big deal. But I can tell you, for me, actually exposing myself now and just being vulnerable, open, and honest, and trying to be my truth took much more courage than I've ever needed to before.
Yes.
To do that.
Yes. It's so interesting you say that, and I think it's important that people, especially men, are not shamed for being vulnerable and sensitive. It really needs to be seen as a strength and not a weakness. And we need to redefine, like, what is strength, what is success. All these things need to come under a redefinition, and that's why, when people strive to be what they think is successful and strong, it may not be who they really are.
Totally. And the other thing I've noticed as well is that when you talk about sensitivity or love or compassion, people almost think that then that means I'm going to become a pushover, and just suit everyone's needs of what they are saying to, and then it goes back into fit in. But it's almost I feel like if I'm coming from heart and my intention is honorable and I'm living my truth, then it's up to everyone else how they respond to that.
Exactly. And the thing is that I think that when we realize, when we start to become aware that it's a strength, we can actually, embrace it in a way without being a pushover. And that's something that I've started to talk about more, because I had to learn it over the last few years, because I realized that, that there aren't tools for there's a lot of things that where there aren't already tools out there. So I realized I had to develop the tools myself, because for example, when I after I had the cancer, and then I was healed and I understood what caused the cancer, but I also realized I couldn't go back to the old paradigm, the old community or culture that I used to be in before the cancer, because that was the environment where I got cancer. And I knew that if I went back to that environment, it would be hard for me to be in it without trying to fit in with them. And if I tried to fit in with them, I would be doing all those things that caused the cancer in the first place. I would be that person. In other words, I would have to go back to being that person that got the cancer. I got the cancer because I always feared not being liked or not being accepted. I feared disappointing people. I feared not being enough. I was a people pleaser, a doormat, all these kinds of things. So I really had to move away and rediscover who I am, and rediscover who I am in an environment where nobody knew me, and so that I wouldn't have this kind of a bias where, because when you're with people who know you, you're afraid of disappointing them, and that's where my inability to say no. I have this inability to say no, and I had this tendency to lose myself because I couldn't say no, and I always ended up doing what everyone else wanted me to do. So this is why I really needed to get away from everyone to discover, who am I, though? If no one is around me, who am I? What do I do? What do I want to spend my time doing? And so that's something I encourage people to do. That's so important. It's to get to know who you are. Yeah. Who is your authentic self?
Brilliant. And I can imagine a lot of people will be reaching out to you, Anita. Just don't mind me asking, but how many books have you sold to date? Do you know even?
I know it's over 1 million, but I don't know exact amount. But of the first book, definitely over 1 million copies of Dying to Be Me in 45 languages, which is, it's hard for me to believe, and I feel, it feels really funny even saying it, because I never thought of myself as a writer. I still think of myself as that people pleaser doormat person.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And with affecting so many people's lives just through your own inspirational story and leading by example, you're going to have to put boundaries around that, to maintain your true self, right?
Yes. So a lot of people are afraid of putting, of boundaries. People who are people pleasers and doormats are afraid of boundaries. And so I talk about that. But what I do is I have a slightly different take on things. So it's not about boundaries just for the sake of boundaries, but it is about finding something in your life that is so important to you that you don't want to take away from that. So I'm trying to see if I can articulate it better. So, for example, if somebody's a doormat who has lost themselves to everyone else, yes, they need boundaries, but when they just set boundaries, very often they'll feel guilty when they say no. They feel guilty, or they feel that, oh my gosh, it's so hard to say no. But if you take someone who's a doormat and you help them find their calling, you really help them find their purpose, their passion, their calling. And very often their calling will be something where they feel really good doing it, but they're also helping a lot of other people doing it. You know, it's like I feel right now I have found my calling. And because I'm doing something that I love doing, but also it's helping a lot of other people, every time someone wants me to do something that's not me, I have something to weigh it against. It's like, oh, but if I say yes to them, it's taking away from all these people I'm helping. So I have to say no to that because I'm more valued over here helping these people doing the project I'm doing. So when you help a people pleaser find their calling, it becomes easier for them to say no because they're doing something more important. But when the people pleaser is still at the state where they're lost in everybody else's doing and being what everyone else wants them to be, it's very hard for them to develop boundaries. So the idea is don't think about the boundaries. Let's focus on what your calling and your purpose is, and then the rest will fall into place.
Oh, love it. Love it. That makes so much sense. Makes so much sense. I got one quick question for you before I change gears, because I ask everyone a few questions on the show. But do you get stressed these days at all, or do you have a different relationship with all that now?
Although it does rear its head, I have a different relationship with it because I trust that everything happens for the best because of the way my life has unfolded. I know that all I have to do is be authentic. And when I get stressed, it's a very different stress from what it used to be. So in the past, like before having the near-death experience, when I would get stressed, it was because I was living a life that wasn't my life. And so when you have a problem, you don't always know how to deal with it because you're trying to be someone you're not. Today, when I get stressed, I'm living the life I love. And when I get stressed, there is a part of me that knows that, okay, this is just a challenge that will make me stronger and take me to the next level of what I'm doing right now. So there is that kind of feeling underneath where, so it's not that I don't get stressed at all, but there isn't a fear. Previously, it was a more fearful stress. Now it's more like a time constraint stress. It's like, oh God, I got to do this. This is tedious and it's causing me stress because I have so many things to do. Previously, it was more like a fear. It's like, I don't know how to handle this. And there's this fear of failing and displeasing people. And it was much bigger. It's a different feeling. And I wish there were two different words for it. But yeah, one was more like a fearful stress. And now it's more like a, okay, this is stressful, but it's stretching my muscles, but I know I'll get through it.
Yeah, got you. There's a term called eustress, and then it's the relationship, because we can, on perception, do we perceive it as a challenge, or do we perceive it as terrifies me? You know, and they can be the same situations, but our relationship changes daily. Yeah, and because I always think of no struggle, no strength. But what you're saying is that if struggles come, but you're on purpose, they're just assisting you to grow, which is beautiful.
Exactly. And what you say is right. No struggles, no strength. If I didn't have any struggles, I wouldn't be where I am today. But at the same time, I do understand why there are some people whose stresses actually drive them to depression. It drives them to break down. And that's because those stresses have been brought onto them, like on a journey which maybe wasn't even one of their choosing. It's not from them being authentic and being who they are. So they don't know how to deal with those problems.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm aware of the time, Anita, so I'm going to change gears and ask you a few questions I ask everyone on the show. And
sure.
The first one I ask everyone, you might have kind of answered it with your whole journey, I'm not sure. But I'll ask it for you anyway. And it's, what's one of your low points in your life you've had, but later in life turned into a blessing?
The cancer. Yeah, having the cancer has turned out to be the biggest gift, actually, because it's allowed me to help a lot of people.
Yeah, even though you probably weren't thinking that at the time, that's for sure.
No, it was the worst time of my life. It was absolutely, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, what I went through.
Yeah, yeah. What next question? What does your morning routine look like?
Okay, so I travel a lot, but my morning routine at the moment is one where I don't usually jump out of bed all fresh. I'm not a morning person, so I'm kind of lazy in the morning, and I laze around, and then I'll check my emails, and then I'll have a cup of tea. I'm a tea person, not a coffee person. And then by maybe 10 a.m., I'll start to think about going out for a walk and doing things.
Yeah, got it.
I wish it was different. I'm quite embarrassed about it, but never mind.
As long as you're happy doing it, that's the main thing.
I am.
If you could have dinner with anyone tonight from any time frame in the world, past, present, who would it be, do you think, and why?
Oh, wow, that's an amazing question. Okay, so somebody who I have loved since I was really young was Princess Diana.
Oh.
And the reason I love her is because I can tell she's an empath and she's super sensitive, and she was thrown into the limelight, and I think she really, really struggled with that. She really struggled. She really wanted to make it work and couldn't, and I just have a lot of admiration and feeling for her.
Yeah, wonderful. Funnily enough, you say Princess Diana, my wife Linda was like, we got to watch this documentary on Netflix, and it was all about Diana, and I didn't I kind of grew up a little bit younger with her in the limelight, and I watched it, and it was incredible. I thought, wow, what a lady. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, she is really amazing, and I know she's probably a true blue empath.
Yeah.
That really comes through with her.
Last question. What's one thing about yourself most people wouldn't know?
Gosh, let me think, because I'm usually quite open with the public about things about me. Everybody knows I love chocolate. They know I have a thing for shoes and purses. What would they not know? Gosh, I'm trying to. You stumped me on that one. I'm trying to think of something fun that would surprise people. What would they not know? They know that I used to be a fan of Cyndi Lauper, and I used to dress like her when I was young and would get into trouble with my family because I would spray paint my hair.
That's cool. So, that's very cool.
Yeah, I used to spray paint my hair in these neon colors, and my dad wanted me to have an arranged marriage with an Indian person, so he used to freak out that I used to do that. So, yeah, so not a lot of people know that. Maybe.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's amazing. And
yes.
Yeah, last thing, is there anything you'd like to add to our listeners of what we've covered today to ponder on to wrap it up?
I would want your listeners to know that not to take life so seriously, that everybody, like our medical system, our governments, our education system, our religions, our spirituality, everybody takes life too seriously. So you have to know that you have to, I would want you to know to find your joy, laugh, have fun. That is the most healing and spiritual thing you can do, is really just to lighten up and to know that you are everything you are trying to attain. So, and spirituality is not something to be pursued. It's something you already are, whether you realize it or not. And don't let anybody else, take your power away from you. Don't give your power away to people that make you feel that you need them in order to be more spiritual or to attain enlightenment. No, you just lighten up, laugh, live life fully, really, truly live life fully. I know because I didn't before, I do now. You're here to have a physical experience, enjoy it, find your joy, and that's really it. And if all else fails, eat chocolate. That always works. It works for me.
Amen to that, Anita. That's, yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's beautiful. For everyone listening, where can I send them to? Are you active on social media? Is the website the best place if people want to connect?
Yes, so I've got a website. It's anitamoorjani.com, and we're very active on social media. I've got a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, so they can find me on any of those platforms.
Beautiful.
And they can also. I do a lot of speaking events, and of course, I love to meet people at the events.
Will we ever see you in Australia?
I would love to. I'm waiting for a promoter or an event coordinator to actually organize that, because the way we do it is I get invited to speak in different countries, and so I haven't received anything from Australia yet. I get people keep writing to me and saying, hey, why aren't you coming to Australia? Why aren't you coming to Australia? Because I get invitations from a lot of places, but I haven't actually received a proper, like somebody actually interested in hosting an event in Australia.
Right. Wow. Well, we'll have to work on that one for sure. That's for sure. Anita, thank you so much for coming on today. Your work's been a great inspiration in my life to live my truth too, and I'm personally grateful for everything you do and put out there. So, and I've no doubt everyone listening to this today will be very inspired to not take life so seriously, and like you said, and start living now. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing as well. Thank you so much for today, for the interview.
Thanks, Anita. Hey guys, thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that podcast with Anita as much as I did. I truly find it a privilege to be able to have these conversations with fantastic people and put them out into cyberspace and share the conversations with everyone else too. So if you made it to the end, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and I hope it inspired you as much as it does inspires me, and give us all plenty to ponder on as we live without fear and live our truths and make the most of each day. As far as I'm concerned, they are a blessing. Every day we have is a gift. So make the most of it, hey? And don't forget, guylawrence.com.au. Head back there if you want to join us for the beta test launch of the Lettering Academy, which kicks off in August at some stage. But just go back there and find out more to join the waiting list. Awesome. Have a fantastic week, guys.